Alaska in winter. A vast, unforgiving wilderness. The landscape stretches endlessly, a sea of white under a sky that seems to go on forever. The cold is biting, a constant reminder of the harsh environment. Every breath you take feels like ice in your lungs. I was about to spend the night exposed to its raw power, without a tent or sleeping bag. The mere thought of it was daunting, but it was a challenge I had willingly accepted. I wanted to test my limits, to see if I could survive in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. This was the challenge I had set for myself, a test of my survival skills and my will. It was not just about physical endurance, but also about mental strength. Could I keep my wits about me when faced with the relentless cold and isolation? The thought sent shivers down my spine, a mix of fear and exhilaration. I knew that every decision I made could mean the difference between life and death. The stakes were high and the margin for error was slim. This was survival in its purest form. No modern conveniences, no safety nets, just me, my skills, and the unforgiving wilderness. It was a raw, primal experience that stripped away all the comforts of modern life. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the snow-covered landscape. The temperature dropped rapidly, and the light began to fade. I knew I had limited time to find a suitable place to spend the night. The air grew colder, the silence broken only by the crunch of my boots on the frozen ground. Each step was a reminder of the isolation and the challenge that lay ahead. The vastness of the wilderness was both awe-inspiring and intimidating. The vastness of Alaska pressed in, a stark reminder of my own vulnerability. It was easy to feel small and insignificant in such an immense landscape, but I couldn't afford to dwell on that. I had to stay focused. This was not a game. It was a fight for survival. Every decision, every action had to be carefully considered. There was no room for mistakes. The cold was relentless, and the night would be even harsher. Doubt crept into my mind. Could I really endure a night in these conditions? The fear of failure was real, but I couldn't let it paralyze me. I had to push through the doubt and focus on what needed to be done. Could I really endure a night in these conditions? The question lingered, but I knew that my survival depended on my ability to stay calm and think clearly. Panic would only make things worse. The answer, I knew, lay in my ability to use my knowledge and experience. I had trained for this, prepared for this. Now it was time to put that training to the test. I had to rely on my skills and instincts. I had to push aside the fear and focus on the task at hand, finding a suitable campsite before darkness fell. The clock was ticking, and I needed to act quickly. My survival depended on it. My survival depended on it. The wilderness was unforgiving, but I was determined to face it head-on. This was my test, my challenge, and I was ready to meet it. The first order of business was finding shelter. In the harsh, unforgiving environment of the Alaskan wilderness, this was not just a matter of comfort, but of survival. The biting cold and relentless wind could sap your strength and willpower in no time. The biting wind reminded me that exposure was my enemy. Every gust felt like a knife cutting through my layers of clothing, chilling me to the bone. I knew that without proper shelter, hypothermia would soon set in. I needed a location that offered some protection from the elements. The landscape was vast and intimidating, but I had to stay focused. My eyes scanned the horizon for anything that could serve as a barrier against the wind and snow. A stand of trees, a rocky outcrop, anything to break the wind's icy grip. These natural features could mean the difference between life and death in such extreme conditions. I scanned the landscape, my eyes searching for natural features that could offer some respite. The snow-covered terrain was both beautiful and treacherous, a stark reminder of nature's duality. A cluster of spruce trees caught my attention. Their dense branches, heavy with snow, seemed to offer a sanctuary from the relentless wind. Their dense branches, weighed down with snow, promised a degree of shelter. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best option I had at the moment. I changed course, my boots sinking into the deep snow as I made my way towards them. Each step was a struggle, but the promise of even a slight reprieve from the wind kept me going. Reaching the trees, I felt a momentary sense of relief. The wind was less fierce here, the air slightly warmer. It was a small victory, but in this environment every little bit helped. The wind was less fierce here, the air slightly warmer. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I knew I couldn't let my guard down, there was still much to do. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I had to work quickly, using the remaining daylight to build a shelter and gather firewood. Time was of the essence, and the Alaskan wilderness waits for no man. I knew I had to work quickly, using the remaining daylight to build a shelter and gather firewood. The temperature would drop even further once the sun set, and I needed to be prepared. The Alaskan wilderness waits for no man. Its beauty is matched only by its brutality, and only those who respect its power can hope to survive. Shelter and fire. These were my top priorities. One offered protection from the elements, the other the promise of warmth and a psychological boost. I needed both to survive the night. Using my hands, I started digging into the snow beneath the spruce trees. The goal was to create a shallow trench, a depression in the snow that would offer some insulation from the cold ground. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Above me, the spruce boughs would provide a roof, trapping my body heat and offering some protection from the elements. With the beginnings of a shelter taking shape, my thoughts turned to fire. Fire meant warmth. Fire meant survival. I needed to find dry tinder, kindling and fuel to sustain a fire through the long, dark hours ahead. Finding dry tinder in this frozen wasteland was a challenge. I searched beneath fallen trees, peeling back layers of bark, hoping to find dry wood beneath. Finally, I found a small cache of dry birch bark, its papery layers offering hope. Next, I needed kindling and fuel. Dead branches, fallen from the spruce trees, were my best bet. I gathered an armful, carefully selecting pieces of varying thickness. The thicker logs would be my fuel, sustaining the fire through the night. With my tinder, kindling, and fuel gathered, I took out my ferrocerium rod, striking it against a piece of birch bark. A shower of sparks rained down. One by one they died out, failing to ignite the tinder. My heart sank with each failed attempt. Finally a spark caught, igniting the birch bark. I carefully nurtured the flame, adding small pieces of kindling, willing it to grow. Section 5. Hunger pangs, foraging and cooking in the cold. The warmth of the fire was a welcome relief. It brought with it a sense of security, a flicker of hope in the encroaching darkness. But as the initial relief subsided, I felt a familiar pang, hunger. Foraging for food in the Alaskan winter was a daunting prospect. The landscape appeared barren, locked in winter's icy grip. I knew my options were limited. I scanned the area around my campsite, my eyes searching for any sign of edible plants. To my surprise, I found a patch of lingonberry bushes, their bright red berries peeking through the snow. The berries were frozen solid, but they were edible and would provide some much-needed sustenance. Section 6. Liquid Lifeline. The importance of melting snow. Food was a priority, but water was even more crucial. Dehydration was a constant threat in cold weather, and I knew I needed to replenish my fluids. Melting snow was the only option. Using my metal cup, I scooped up a mound of snow and held it over the fire. The heat slowly melted the snow, transforming it into precious water. The process was agonizingly slow, but I knew I couldn't rush it. Impatience could lead to mistakes, and mistakes in this environment could be deadly. As the water heated, I added a handful of lingonberries to the cup. The berries would add a touch of flavor and provide a few essential vitamins. It wasn't much, but it was a meal fit for a survivalist. Section 7. The cold reality, facing the challenges of a frozen night. As the night wore on, the temperature plummeted. The once serene landscape transformed into a harsh, unforgiving environment. The cold was not just a physical sensation but a mental challenge, testing my resolve and endurance. The fire became my lifeline, its warmth the only thing standing between me and hypothermia. Each flicker of the flame was a reminder of the thin line between survival and succumbing to the elements. Exhaustion gnawed at me, but I knew sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. My body screamed for rest, but my mind was acutely aware of the dangers that sleep could bring in such extreme conditions. To fall asleep would be to surrender to the cold, to risk losing consciousness and never waking up. The stakes were high, and the margin for error was non-existent. I huddled closer to the fire, pulling my arms close to my body, trying to conserve heat. Every movement was deliberate, aimed at preserving the precious warmth that the fire provided. The cold was relentless, seeping through my layers of clothing, chilling me to the bone. It was a constant battle, a test of willpower and resilience. I rubbed my hands together, trying to restore circulation to my numb fingers. The simple act of rubbing my hands became a ritual, a small but vital effort to keep the blood flowing and the frostbite at bay. The fire crackled, sending sparks spiraling into the night sky, a mesmerizing dance that held my attention and kept the despair at bay. The hours crawled by, each one an eternity, each one an eternity. The vast expanse of the night sky, dotted with stars, seemed indifferent to my struggle. It was a humbling reminder of nature's grandeur and my own vulnerability. The silence of the night was broken only by the crackling fire and the occasional howl of a wolf in the distance. These sounds, though eerie, were a reminder that I was not entirely alone in this frozen wilderness. Fear gnawed at the edges of my mind, but I pushed it back, focusing on the rhythm of my breath, the warmth of the fire, the will to survive. In those moments I found a strange sense of peace, a clarity that came from facing the raw, unfiltered reality of nature's challenges. Section 8. Lessons Learned, Essential Tips for Cold Weather Survival. As the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness, I felt a surge of relief. I had survived the night. I had faced the brutal reality of the Alaskan wilderness and emerged, battered but unbroken. The experience had been a harsh teacher, but the lessons learned were invaluable. Preparation is paramount. Knowing how to find or build shelter, make fire, find food and water are essential skills for surviving in cold weather. Always pack extra layers of clothing, waterproof gear, and a first aid kit. A reliable fire starter like a ferrocerium rod is a must-have. Never underestimate the power of the human spirit. The will to survive is a powerful force. It can push you beyond your perceived limits and help you overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Section 9. Reflections. A Night Etched in Memory. As I packed up my meager camp, the rising sun painting the snow-covered landscape in hues of pink and gold, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons learned, for the resilience of the human spirit, for the sheer beauty of the Alaskan wilderness. That night, alone in the frozen embrace of the Alaskan wilderness, I had faced my fears and emerged stronger. It was a night that would forever be etched in my memory, a testament to the indomitable spirit that resides within us all. It was a reminder that even in the face of adversity, hope flickers and survival is possible.